This is a May Luna Media production.
Hey, and welcome to Synaptic Soul, the podcast where science meets spirit, and we get real about the beautiful and brutal and magical mess of being human. I'm your host, Ava Marie Anderson, writer, mystic, multidimensional mischief maker. Quick disclaimer, you may hear the occasional snort, sigh, dramatic flop from my two French bulldogs, Rocky and Rambo. They're the soundtracks of my life, my soul companions, and honestly, the real stars of the show. Someday we'll dedicate a full episode to their role in my daily rituals, emotional healing, and wild spiritual life. But for now, just know that they're always close by, snoring their support. Let's dive in. Let's start this episode where most of us don't expect prayer to live, in the meat suit, that glorious 3-pound lump of neurons sitting inside your skull, because before we float into the quantum field and collapse probability waves with our whispered intentions, we need to understand what's happening inside the brain and body when humans pray. And spoiler, it is not just wishful thinking. It's chemistry, it's electricity, and it's biology doing a damn good impression of the divine. So when you pray, whether you're whispering Dear God or you're chanting a mantra, repeating Om Mani Padme Hum, your brain shifts gears. And functional MRI studies have shown that prayer lights up the prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain responsible for focus and decision making and emotional regulation. Like, think of the prefrontal cortex as the conductor of the mental orchestra, calming the chaotic violins of fear and anxiety while letting the flutes of peace and clarity take center stage. And at the same time, activity in the amygdala, which is your little almond-shaped panic button in your brain, it drops down. So, translation, prayer literally turns down the volume on fear. And no wonder people walk away from prayer feeling calmer, even if their outer circumstances haven't changed one bit. And now here's where it gets juicy. Repetitive forms of prayer, like rosary beads or the Vedic chants or Buddhist mala beads, they aren't just spiritual traditions. They are actually neurological hacks. That rhythm, that repetition, it actually synchronizes your brain waves, pulling you into the theta state. And theta is the brainwave frequency between wakefulness and sleep, and it's associated with creativity and intuition and healing. So shamans and mystics and monks, they have all been using prayer and chant to drop into the state for centuries. And neuroscience now backs it. Your brain loves rhythm. And when it gets into that groove, you access states of consciousness where ordinary starts to feel extraordinary. And prayer also floods the system with feel-good neurotransmitters, like dopamine, that molecule of motivation and reward. It lights up. And serotonin, which is the mood stabilizer, it gets a boost. And then oxytocin, that cuddle chemical, it spikes when prayer is done in community, like in a church service or a mosque or a temple. And that's why people often feel a palpable sense of love and safety and connection when they're praying together. The body is literally dosing itself with bonding and bliss chemicals. And science would call this self-regulation, but mystics will call it communion with God. And it's the same vibe, just a different vocabulary. But it doesn't just stop at neurotransmitters. Prayer impacts the autonomic nervous system. So when you enter prayer, your breath slows down and your heart rate steadies and your body shifts out of fight or flight and into rest and repair. And this is where the magic of healing happens. The immune system recalibrates and inflammation markers drop and your body begins to restore itself. And studies have shown that people who engage in regular prayer or meditation practices have better cardiovascular health and stronger immunity and even live longer. Imagine that. Not only are you talking to the divine, but you're also giving your body a spa day at the cellular level. And here's where we tie it back to religion. It doesn't matter if it's Catholic Hail Marys or Sufi chants or Hindu bhajans or Buddhist metta practice, the body and the brain respond the same way. It's different words, same circuitry. You could even argue that the reason why so many religions develop structured rhythmic prayers is because our ancestors intuitively knew that they worked. They didn't need MRIs or lab coats. They just felt the shift. And modern science is only now catching up to what was obvious to mystics all along. Prayer isn't imaginary. It is embodied. And then there's also this fascinating role of mirror neurons when prayer is communal. Like, ever notice how a group prayer feels more powerful than praying alone? Well, neuroscience shows that when we're in groups, our brains start to synchronize. Our breathing aligns, our heartbeats sync, and mirror neurons fire in rhythm, and then suddenly, one person's prayer isn't just their own. It is amplified by the collective. And religion might call that where two or more are gathered. Science calls it entrainment, but either way, the effect is real. So, the next time somebody tells you that prayer is just talking to yourself, you can hit them with the receipts. It is not just talking, it is rewiring. It is calming your stress circuits, it's juicing up your happy chemicals and regulating your nervous system, and then syncing your brain with others if you're praying in community. Prayer is just as much biology as it is theology. It is the human body's built-in mechanism for aligning with something greater. And here's the kicker. The brain doesn't actually care what you're saying. Like, whether you're reciting a psalm or chanting Om or whispering thank you universe, the neural and chemical effects are the same. The divine doesn't play favorites with vocabulary. Your biology is the proof. Prayer works because it changes you. And in a changed you, well, you interact differently with the world and with the infinite. So, if prayer's the body's way of hacking peace and clarity and connection, what happens when we zoom out into the quantum field? Because if the biology is the how, what is the why? Well, bestie, buckle up, because in the next segment, we are sliding into the wild frontier of quantum mechanics and intention, where your whispered words become energy ripples across the entire fabric of reality. All right, so we covered the biology, the brain chemicals, the nervous system reset, the whole prayer is a spa day for your cells thing. But now let's zoom out, because prayer isn't just internal self-regulation. And if it were, every skeptic would be satisfied just calling it stress relief. But millions of humans across history swear that prayer doesn't just change them, it changes the world around them. How? Welcome to the wild and weird playground of quantum mechanics. So here's the 101. In quantum physics, reality exists in probabilities until something is observed or measured. It's that famous double-slit experiment proving that particles behave like waves of possibility until attention forces them into a definite state. And this means that the very act of observation collapses infinite potentials into a single outcome. Prayer, at its core, is focused observation plus intention. It's not just you talking to the ceiling. It is you directing consciousness, the most mysterious force in the universe, toward a desired outcome. And now science isn't just hand-waving here. Let's talk experiments. So at Princeton's Pear Lab, it's Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research. I can't even say the word anomalies. It's basically they have decades of studies showing that human intention could subtly but measurably shift the output of random number generators. So Dean Radin at the Institute of Noetic Sciences has run similar experiences with water molecules and even with plant growth, finding that focused thought creates statistically significant effects. And then physicist William Tiller, in his intention experiments, he found that human consciousness could alter the electromagnetic properties of a room, like as if focused prayer imprinted the space with new rules. And skeptics will say the effects are tiny. And sure, maybe you're not going to levitate your coffee mug with prayer tomorrow morning, but tiny, consistent effects in physics mean that something real is happening. So when you scale that across millions of people praying or meditating or focusing intention at the same time, those effects compound. Like, remember those collective prayer experiments where crime rates dropped in cities during mass meditation events? That is not fluffy woo. That is statistics. And here's the juicy part. Across religions, the mechanism is the same. Like, a Christian bows their head and says, "Lord, bring me peace." And a Hindu chants a mantra to Lakshmi for abundance. Or a Buddhist radiates metta, that loving kindness to all beings. A Sufi spins an ecstatic dance until their entire being is one giant prayer. It's different words and rituals and symbols, but at the quantum level, they're all doing the same fucking thing. They're collapsing probability waves into desired outcomes with the force of consciousness. And don't forget the emotional component or whatever. The quantum field doesn't just respond to words, it responds to energy. So think about the difference between praying from desperation versus praying from certainty. Like, please God, maybe, if you're listening, has a totally different vibration than thank you, universe, for what is already on its way. And neuroscience shows us that emotions are electromagnetic signals. Like, the heart's electromagnetic field is 60 times stronger than the brain's. So when prayer carries emotional charge, like gratitude and love and faith, that signal is stronger. You're not just sending a memo to the divine, you are broadcasting on surround sound. And let's just add a little sass here. So prayer is basically sliding into the DMs of the quantum field, except instead of a thirsty text at midnight, it is your soul sending a vibrational signal across the universe saying, hey, this is what I'm ready to receive. And the wild thing, the field responds. And not like how you expect all the time, but it responds. And now, if you really want to stretch your cosmic mind, let's start looking at entanglement. So quantum entanglement shows that particles can become linked, so basically what happens to one instantly affects the other, even if they're light years apart. And mystics have been saying this forever. Everything is connected. Prayer taps into that entangled web. When you pray for somebody across the world, you are not just sending something across space. You are activating the invisible threads that were already there. And this is why every religion insists that prayer is powerful, and why it doesn't matter what name you give to God or Source or Allah or Brahman or the Great Spirit. The quantum field does not give a fuck about your vocabulary. It cares about your frequency. Like, words are just a focusing tool. It's the consciousness and the emotion behind them that collapse probability into reality. And here's the kicker. Your biology and your quantum field are not two separate things. They're part of the same dance. So when I guess where prayer calms your brain and syncs your nervous system, you become a better transmitter and a clearer channel and a finely tuned radio that can both broadcast intention and pick up guidance. Which means that prayer is not just you talking out into the void. It's also how the void talks back. Like, you ever finish a prayer and suddenly you feel clarity, or you get a nudge, or you hear that quiet whisper in your own heart? Like, that's feedback. That is the field answering. So prayer works because it does double duty. It changes you internally and it shifts probabilities externally. It's the biology and the physics. It's both chemical reactions in your brain and ripples across the fabric of reality. And that's why it's universal. That's why every tradition found its own flavor of prayer. Not because one culture was right and the others were wrong, but because prayer is a human instinct hardwired into us for surviving and thriving and connecting with the infinite. And if quantum mechanics feels too abstract, just remember, the universe is literally made up of vibrations. Your voice is vibration. Your thoughts create measurable waves. Your heart broadcasts an electromagnetic field. So when you pray, you're not just doing something out there or imaginary. You're using the most natural forces in existence, vibration, energy, and focus, to interact with reality itself. And in the next segment, we're going to go deeper into the ancestral and cultural side of prayer, because it turns out that your great-great-grandmother's whispered novella or your ancestor's drum invocation might still be echoing into your DNA today. Prayer isn't just yours. It's collective, it's ancestral, and it is eternal. This episode is brought to you in part by one of my most favorite humans on this spinning planet, Morgan Garza, and her book Soul Magic. If you've ever felt like your power was just waiting beneath the surface, or like there's something ancient and electric inside of you ready to be reclaimed, then this is the book that helps you remember. Soul Magic is not just a read, it is a summoning. It's filled with rituals and stories and the kind of grounded spiritual wisdom that doesn't talk at you, it talks with you. Morgan writes like a soul sister, a cosmic cheerleader, and a priestess all rolled into one. And it's a must-have for anyone on the path of awakening, reclaiming. So grab your copy at morgangarza.com or wherever books are sold, or bless someone else's journey and gift it, because real magic's meant to be shared. That's Soul Magic by Morgan Garza. You'll feel it in your bones. If biology shows us how prayer works and quantum physics shows us the why it works, then human history shows us how deeply embedded it is into who we are. Like, prayer isn't a modern hack. It is as old as fire and as universal as breathing and as cross-cultural as music. Like, every civilization that has ever existed has had a version of prayer, and they all point to the same truth. Humans instinctively reach for something bigger, and we have been doing it forever. And think about it. You've got your Catholic novenas, or your Jewish davening, or your Islamic salah, or Buddhist chanting, or Hindu mantras, or indigenous rain dances, or African drum circles, or Tibetan prayer flags. Like, these practices look wildly different on the outside, but strip away the cultural costumes, and you see the same core function. Humans focusing intention, often with emotion, rhythm, or ritual, and then directing it toward the unseen. Like, you could argue that religion itself is just the organized scaffolding built around humanity's natural impulse to pray. And here's the kicker. Prayer traditions often developed without any kind of contact between cultures. Like, a villager in ancient India chanting Sanskrit mantras had no connection to a Navajo elder singing prayers to the land, and yet both were doing the same thing. And this is how you know it's universal. Just like every culture independently discovered music or dance, every culture independently discovered prayer. It is hardwired into our survival because prayer regulates the nervous system and amplifies communal bonds. Like, our ancestors didn't need scientific journals to tell them it worked. They felt it in their bodies and they saw it in their communities. But let's zoom in on some examples. In Catholicism, prayer beads, the rosary, are used to count repeated prayers, helping the mind enter a meditative state. In Islam, prayer beads are also used, called misbaha, for reciting the 99 names of God. In Buddhism and Hinduism, they also have mala beads for chanting mantras. And three completely different traditions, all landing on the same hack: repetition, rhythm, and counting prayers pull you deeper into focus. And neuroscience now confirms what they knew intuitively. Like, rhythm creates trance states and then opens altered states of consciousness where healing and intuition flourish. Or you know what? Look at sound. Tibetan monks chant in guttural overtones. Sufis whirl in ecstatic dance until they have become living prayers. And indigenous shamans use drumming to call in spirits and shift reality. You've got Jewish cantors sing prayers that vibrate through synagogues. These aren't random. Sound waves are vibrations, and vibrations affect matter. That is basic physics. Ancestors may not have known the word resonance, but they knew that prayer carried on the breath or sung in the air had more power than words left unspoken. And then here's where it gets even juicier. Like, prayer doesn't just connect you with the divine, it connects you with your lineage. Like, modern epigenetics shows us that trauma and resilience both pass through DNA. So if your great-grandmother prayed every night for her children to survive, those energetic imprints might still ripple in your body today. If her whispered novenas are gone, they still echo in your whole fucking cellular memory, just like the inherited trauma does. So prayer then isn't just something that you do, it's something that you carry. And you can feel this when you walk into sacred spaces. Like, if you've ever entered an old cathedral or a mosque or a temple, and then you felt goosebumps crawling all over your skin, that is not just architecture. That is centuries of accumulated prayer in the walls. Energy lingers. Ritual repetition imprints. And science might call it morphic fields or energetic residue, and mystics just call it presence. Either fucking way, though, you are not just standing in a building, you are standing in a cloud of centuries of focused intention. And then don't sleep on collective prayer. When a community gathers after a disaster, whether it's Christians holding a vigil or Muslims gathering for a funeral prayer or indigenous nations drumming for healing, people instinctively know that prayer is a response to crisis. Even in secular settings like candlelit vigils, humans default to silence and intention and collective focus. It's prayer without the label because the instinct runs deeper than the dogma. And the beauty is that prayer adapts. It flows through whatever cultural vessel that it lands in, and that's why it survived for millennia. Religion might fracture into denominations and then argue about theology, but the act of prayer, that never dies. Because at the end of the day, we all bow our heads and we whisper to the unseen and we hope that the infinite hears us. So when we talk about prayer working, it's not just personal. It is ancestral, it is cultural, it is collective. Prayer connects you back through your lineage and across your community and into the shared human instinct to commune with the sacred. Like you're never praying alone. Your voice joins the chorus of millions who came before you and millions alive today, all weaving intention into the same quantum field. But here's a little bit of sass. Arguing about which religion has the right way to pray is like arguing about which country invented water. Like everybody's got their flavor, but the source is the same. Prayer is a human birthright. Nobody owns it. I mean, you know what? We're going to go into the next segment talking about how prayer doesn't just connect you to your history or spirit, but it actually changes your physiology in real time. Like we're talking heart rhythms and immune systems and collective nervous system resets because prayer isn't just spiritual poetry. It is embodied medicine. All right, so we've gone into the brain chemistry and we've taken a ride through the quantum mechanics and we've danced with the ancestors, but now let's bring it right back into the body and into your nervous system, that sensitive wiring that decides whether or not you feel safe and connected and alive or stressed and panicked and fried. Because one of the most underrated superpowers of prayer is that it's basically a reset button for your nervous system. So think of your nervous system like the control board of your life. It is constantly scanning, am I safe? Can I rest? Or do I need to be on high alert? And most of us live with the dial stuck on fight or flight, like rushing through deadlines and doom-scrolling news cycles and drowning in sensory overload. Our bodies were not designed to run on that kind of chronic stress. So enter prayer. Prayer is one of the most ancient, elegant ways humans have shifted their nervous systems from survival mode and into what's called the parasympathetic state, which is your rest and repair mode. But let's get nerdy. So heart rate variability is one of the best markers of the nervous system. Like high HRV means that your body can adapt quickly to stress and then recover. Low HRV is linked to anxiety and depression and heart disease and burnout. And studies show that prayer and meditation practices increase HRV, meaning that your heart rhythm becomes more flexible and resilient and coherent. And coherent is the key word here, because when you pray with sincerity, your breathing slows and your heartbeat stabilizes and your body drops into synchronization. And that's the state of coherence. Well, it's basically like the jazz of your physiology. It's smooth and adaptive and creative. And this isn't just that you feel calm. This coherence literally changes the way that your brain and your heart communicate. So the Heart Math Institute, you've heard me talk about this before, they have done decades of research showing that when people engage in heart-centered practices like gratitude and compassion or prayer, the electromagnetic field of the heart becomes more ordered and expansive. So translation, your prayer doesn't just calm you, it radiates out of your body like Wi-Fi and impacts the people around you. And that's why sitting in a room where others are praying can feel different, even if you're not actively praying yourself. Like your nervous system sync. It's science, but it feels like magic. And now let's talk collective prayer, because this is where things get a little extra spicy. There have been multiple large-scale experiments on what happens when groups of people meditate or pray together. And one of the most famous is the Maharishi effect, where groups practicing transcendental meditation in cities where, I don't know, they were like associated with like measurable drops in crime rates and violence and even war deaths. Like, skeptics have tried to poke holes in it, but study after study suggests the same thing. When enough people focus their nervous systems on peace, the collective nervous system of a community shifts. Like, whether you call it morphic resonance or the quantum field or just plain human empathy, the effect is real. And religion, of course, figured this out long before the labs did, and that's why communal prayer is so central in so many traditions. Like, Muslims pray together 5 times a day. The Jews gather for minyan, requiring 10 people to form a prayer quorum. And Christians flock to churches on Sundays. Indigenous nations drum and sing in circles. But beyond theology, these are nervous system synchronization rituals. When humans breathe and chant and move together in rhythm, their bodies entrain. So syncing heartbeats and brain waves and even hormonal cycles. Science calls it entrainment, yes. Spirituality calls it where 2 or more are gathered. It's the same thing. And this is where the healing dimension of prayer really lands, because chronic stress is one of the root causes of almost every modern illness, from heart disease to autoimmune disorders. Prayer is a free, universally accessible way for you to hit the brakes on stress. Like, it literally shifts you from pumping out cortisol, which is your stress hormone, to releasing oxytocin and endorphins. And over time, that biochemical reset helps your body repair and your immune system strengthen and your mind clear. Like, no side effects, no prescription necessary, just you and your intention and a willingness to connect. But let's not forget, the nervous system is also the gateway to your intuition. Like, when you're locked in fight or flight, all of your energy is stuck in survival mode. You are scanning for danger. But when prayer drops you into parasympathetic, your system finally has the bandwidth to tune into those subtle signals, the gut feelings, the synchronicities, and those inner whispers that are drowned out when your stress dial is cranked to 11. So prayer doesn't just reset your body, it opens the antenna of your soul. And here's the mic drop moment. Like, this nervous system regulation doesn't care which tradition you follow. You could be kneeling in a pew with a rosary, or bowing toward Mecca, or chanting in Sanskrit, or just fucking sitting quietly whispering your gratitude to the universe. The same shit happens in your body. Different words, different postures, different names for the divine, same parasympathetic switch. The universality of prayer's effect on the nervous system is one of the clearest proofs that it is not superstition. It's physiology. So if you've ever wondered why prayer works, even if you're not sure who's on the other end of the line, here's one answer. It works because it changes you. It rewires your heart rhythms and resets your stress response and strengthens your immune system, and then synchronizes you with others when practiced collectively. Prayer works because your body was built to respond to it. And in case you think that means prayer is just self-soothing, don't worry. In the next segment, we're going to dive into the spicy question of why some prayers feel answered and others don't. Because, let's be honest, if prayer always worked like a vending machine, none of us would still be wondering. So what's really going on with the mystery of answered prayer? Let's break it down. This episode is supported in part by Sage App, aka the app that's basically a metaphysical multivitamin. It's like having a spiritual sanctuary in your pocket, minus the incense smoke in your purse. It's also where I host my new moon manifestation clubs, which, if you know, you know, we go deep. So if you're ready to stop doom scrolling and start soul scrolling, download Sage in the App Store or Google Play and then step into a more intentional, magical version of your day. That's SAGED, like Sage, but with an app. Back to the episode. All right, so far we've established that prayer calms your brain and tunes your nervous system and sends ripples out into the quantum field, but let's be real. If prayer was as simple as ask and ye shall receive, half of us would be billionaires sipping margaritas in private islands right now. Like, I'd be Oprah. You get a car. You get a car. Like, we all know the frustration of praying hard for something, like healing or money or love or clarity, and feeling like the divine hit the ignore on your call. And why does that happen? Like, why do some prayers land like cosmic Amazon Prime delivery and others vanish into what feels like dead air? All right, let's just get one thing clear though. Every religion, every spiritual system has wrestled with this question. Christians talk about God's will. Buddhists talk about karma and attachment. Indigenous traditions talk about timing and alignment with the natural cycles. The fact that all these systems felt the need to explain unanswered prayers tells you that this isn't a glitch. It is a feature of the human-divine interaction. Like, prayer isn't a vending machine. It's a relationship. And here's the first layer. So it's subconscious belief. Neuroscience and physiology, and psychology for that matter, they all tell us that your subconscious mind is 90% of the show, and it doesn't give a fuck what your conscious lips are saying. So if you pray for abundance, but deep down you believe that you're unworthy or undeserving or cursed, that muddy signal gets broadcast into the field. The quantum field responds not to your words, but to your frequency. And this is why affirmations or prayers can feel hollow if you don't actually believe in them. So faith isn't magic pixie dust. It is alignment of conscious intention with subconscious belief. And then here's the second layer. It's timing. Every tradition talks about how divine timing, like it's there in some fucking form. And yeah, I know that can feel like a cop-out when you are desperate, but let's zoom out. Because from the cosmic perspective, your soul might be playing a long game that your personality just doesn't see. Like, maybe the job you prayed for would have crushed your creativity, or maybe the relationship you begged for would have derailed your growth. Or maybe the healing that you prayed for had lessons hidden inside the illness first. The mystics are going to tell you, sometimes unanswered prayer is the answer. And look, I get it. That doesn't make it any less maddening when you are on your knees begging for a miracle, but think about it like this. The universe is not Amazon Prime. Like, just because you hit submit prayer doesn't mean that it's arriving on your porch 48 hours with free shipping. Like, sometimes it's FedEx on back order. Sometimes it's rerouted. Sometimes it's the package that you didn't even know you needed. Prayer is less about controlling outcomes and more about opening to alignment. And then there's the collective dimension. Like, not every prayer is isolated. If 10 people pray for sunny weather at a wedding and 100 farmers pray for rain, whose prayer is going to win? Like, we live in an entangled web of billions of consciousnesses, all broadcasting signals. The field doesn't ignore you, it integrates you. And that means that your prayer is a part of a much larger symphony of intention and timing and flow. This is why humility is baked into prayer across all traditions, basically. It's not just about what you want, it's about your place in the larger pattern. Now, let's just get scientific again for a second. There have been prayer studies done on healing outcomes, and the results are mixed. Like, some show measurable effects and others don't. Does that mean that prayer doesn't work? No, not necessarily. It might mean that prayer isn't a, mechanistic force, just like flipping a switch. Maybe it's more relational and a probabilistic one. Like, just like in quantum physics, the act of observation shifts probabilities, but it doesn't guarantee one specific outcome. Prayer increases the likelihood of certain outcomes, but it doesn't override every variable in the cosmos. And here's something that most people don't like to admit. Prayer often changes you more than it changes external reality. So sometimes the answer isn't that your circumstances shifted, but that you did. Like, you prayed for strength, and instead of the obstacle disappearing, you suddenly had the resilience to walk through it. Or you prayed for clarity, and instead of the answer falling into your lap, your anxiety lifted enough for you to see the obvious next step. Prayer isn't always the genie granting wishes. Sometimes it's the upgrading your own consciousness so that you can handle whatever is coming. And this is why the mystics across traditions insist on praying not for just what you want, but for alignment with the highest good. Christians phrase it as "thy will be done." Buddhists phrase it as non-attachment. Indigenous traditions, they just pray in harmony with the land and the ancestors because they all know that modern neuroscience is finally catching up to. When you release control, your nervous system stays regulated and your field stays coherent, and you are more open to receiving what actually serves you. So, does prayer always work? Well, yeah, but just not in the way that you think. Sometimes it manifests directly, yes. Sometimes it shifts probabilities subtly, okay. Sometimes it transforms you instead of your circumstances, boom. And sometimes the silence itself is the answer, nudging you toward growth or patience or even a different path. So, if prayer was just a cosmic vending machine, we'd all be out here praying for six packs and billion-dollar bank accounts, but that's not the point. Prayer is co-creation, not control. It's conversation, not transaction. And in that space between what you want and what you get, that's where the real alchemy happens. It's where the real magic unfolds. Here's the thing. Most people think of prayer as something that you do. Like, you kneel, you bow, you clasp your hands, you speak the words in silence. But the deeper you go into this practice, the more you realize that prayer isn't just what comes out of your mouth. Prayer is what comes out of your life. Like, you can move through this world as a walking, breathing, living prayer. And that, my friend, is where the real magic unfolds. And every tradition hints at this. In Islam, there's the remembrance of God, not just in formal prayer, but in every breath. In Christianity, Paul writes, "Pray without ceasing," which doesn't mean reciting words 24/7, but living in constant alignment with the divine presence. And Hinduism has puja, the offerings that are woven into daily life. Indigenous cultures pour tobacco and light fires and offer food to ancestors, treating every act as sacred reciprocity, basically. These aren't just one-off moments. They're ways of saying that prayer isn't an event, it is a state of being. And think about this. Every time you say thank you, you are praying. Every time you pause before eating and whispering gratitude to the food on your plate, you are praying. When you take a walk and you marvel at the sunset, that awe that you feel is prayer. And when you choose kindness instead of pettiness, that is prayer in motion. You don't have to be kneeling in a pew or facing an altar or burning incense for your life to become an offering. And here's the kicker. When prayer becomes a way of living, your nervous system doesn't just reset occasionally. It stabilizes in that state. Devotion and gratitude and alignment become your baseline. So instead of reacting from fear, you respond from presence. And instead of begging with the universe to deliver, you just start co-creating with it. Like, you stop praying like somebody desperate for rescue and start praying like somebody walking with power. And that is a whole frequency shift. Living as a prayer also means embodying your intentions. So if you pray for healing, but you keep treating your body like garbage, that's not alignment, that is contradiction. And if you pray for abundance, but you keep operating from scarcity, the vibration is split. But when you let your actions echo your prayers, that signal is clear. Prayer is no longer just words you say when you're desperate. It's the way you move and eat and speak and love and rest and create. Your life itself becomes the altar. And listen, bro, let's not sugarcoat it, because this is why prayer can feel so fucking uncomfortable. Because when you start living as prayer, you feel the contrast more sharply. You notice when your actions don't line up with your words. You'll catch yourself asking for peace while gossiping, or you'll see yourself praying for love while ignoring the call to love yourself. And that's not failure, that is feedback. Prayer as a lifestyle keeps you honest. It constantly realigns you with the energy that you are asking to embody. So let's also remember, living prayer doesn't have to be quiet and polished and polite. Sometimes prayer is messy. Sometimes it's screaming into your journal. Sometimes prayer is crying in the shower. And sometimes it's belly laughing so hard that your neighbors hear you. Sometimes it's choosing to rest when the world tells you to hustle. All of this can be prayer if it's I don't know, rooted in intention and connection. Spirit doesn't want your polished Our Father. Spirit wants your entire fucking self. The rage and the grief and the joy and the gratitude. Prayer works because it lets you bring all of you into the conversation. And when prayer becomes who you are instead of something you do, you start to notice the synchronicities stacking. The right people show up, the answers drop in, the doors open. Not because you're forcing reality, but because you're vibrating in coherence with it. You have tuned your whole life into the frequency of the sacred. And the mystics call this union. Scientists call it coherence, and I call it walking through the world as one big cosmic yes. So the invitation is this. Stop thinking of prayer as only words whispered in crisis. Like, start seeing your whole life as the prayer. Like, when you bless your food, you're praying. When you hold the door open for a stranger, you're praying. When you breathe consciously, you are praying. And when you choose alignment over fear, you're fucking praying, dude. The labels are human, but the energy is universal. And look, the universe does not give a fuck if you call it prayer or intention or mantra or meditation or a gratitude practice. What it responds to is your frequency. Prayer works because you are the prayer. You've always been the altar. You've always been the temple. And when you remember that, you stop begging for miracles to happen and you start living as one. So next time you wonder if prayer works, remember, it is not about whether the divine is listening. It's about whether you're embodying it. Like, words can fade, rituals can vary, religions can argue, but the truth is timeless. Prayer works because prayer is what you are when you live in alignment with the sacred pulse of life itself. If you loved this episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a glowing review. It helps more beautiful souls like you find this space. Because your words matter, your energy ripples, and every review is like a little spell of support for the Synaptic Soul mission. So until next time, stay curious, stay cosmic, and keep waking the F up.